Hey guys, thanks for watching. I wanted to share with you today a story about unresolved anger, and it relates to an ayahuasca journey that I took and some teachings that I received from it. The night before this ceremony, I had a dream that I was working on this beautiful three-dimensional artwork of Jesus, which is really funny because I'm the least artistic person that I know, but it was very clearly a Jesus. And there was a woman there who was kind of facilitating the whole class. And in the dream, I said, "You remind me of my mom, and I miss her." To which this woman just started bawling, and I woke up really quickly. And I haven't thought about my mom in years. In some ways, perhaps I've blocked her out of my mind. But I was very confused as to why I had this dream and why I was doing an artwork of Jesus. And I couldn't figure out why I had this dream. And so going into the ceremony, I was just open to whatever the medicine had to teach me. And what I found was that I had unconsciously harbored a lot of anger towards my mother for a lot of reasons, but the story isn't important now. But I discovered that I had that, and I was able to forgive my mother. And the interesting thing that I discovered was that when it comes to forgiveness, there's mental forgiveness and there's also visceral forgiveness. Like intellectually, I could say, "Oh, yeah, sure, I forgave my mom, no big deal." But my body hadn't caught up. And what I noticed during the ceremony was that my chest relaxed, my solar plexus relaxed, my gut relaxed, and I was able to just enter a place of complete forgiveness. And it was then that I discovered that actually I've been living in a kind of prison of my own making. And what I discovered was that the thing with anger is I view anger as one of our most positive emotions. Anger says no. Anger is really the cornerstone of sovereignty and personal agency. And the problem that a lot of people, and myself included, is that sometimes we feel shame and guilt about having anger towards somebody who means a lot to us, say, for example, a parent. And that was true for me. And so what ended up happening is I turned my anger towards myself. And that showed up in terms of self-sabotage, just as an example. It could show up in a lot of different ways. But the image that I had in my mind was of being locked in a prison with a sadistic torturer that just didn't stop, just kept torturing me again and again and again, day after day. And I didn't even know it. I didn't even know that it was because, at a very young age, I had some needs that I couldn't express that weren't met. And I turned my anger on myself to protect my mother from my anger. And in that way, I could stay in control. And it was such an eye-opener for me because when I was able to viscerally forgive, there was no prison. There was no torturer. And it occurred to me that this dream that I had the night before of Jesus I think, understood at a deeper level what Jesus was talking about, and what salvation really is. And he was modeling forgiveness, forgiving the unforgivable. And forgiveness had always sounded like a rather trite word to me. It's like, well, okay, forgiveness, does that mean that I go along with what happened or I condone what happened to me? And I had felt resistance and I wasn't able to find that place. But I've realized that forgiveness doesn't mean that you condone what happened. Forgiveness is you setting yourself free. And in this case, it was me setting myself free. And I really felt a peace that I haven't felt in decades. And I understood what I think Jesus was talking about when he talked about salvation and he talked about forgiveness, because that's the spiritual path, is to free ourselves of all the prisons that we put ourselves in because of what has happened or what someone has done or hasn't done. And we lock ourselves in that prison and we stay attached to that person, dysfunctionally so. We stay in a kind of dysfunctional bond, if you will. And that, when I look back, that was kind of how I stayed connected with my mother. She's been dead 13 years. And this is how I could stay connected, was through my anger, but it was unconscious. And it certainly wasn't serving me. And so I share this with you because I know that a lot of people, especially in our Western culture, struggle with anger. Anger is very socially unacceptable. So we hide our anger, we act like we're not angry. And I realized that my anger was really saying that I had needs. And I was ashamed of those needs. I was ashamed of having needs because I felt it was weak. But we all have needs. And I didn't know how to communicate those. And I didn't know how to really feel my emotions without becoming anger at that time. It was probably happened when I was very young. And there's a big difference between feeling anger and letting it pass through you and then expressing what you need to express versus actually becoming anger. When you become anger, you're not conscious. You are a vehicle for that energy, but you are more likely to engage in destructive behavior, because when you allow yourself to feel and allow it to pass through you, then you can make a choice as to what course of action you want to take, or an expression that you want to express. But it's when we shame ourselves and we guilt ourselves for feeling anger, or we have fear of what other might say, and we censor ourselves. It's how we swallow our voice, and it's how we deprive ourselves of our voice, and we feel powerless and we feel victimized. And the thing I realized is that I had victimized myself. I had victimized myself by feeling shame, by feeling guilt, not expressing and shoving it down. And I had tortured myself for years in this cycle of shoving my anger down and not honoring it, and not honoring what it was there for. And what it was there for is to say, hey, I have needs. I have genuine needs that don't make me needy and don't make me weak. They make me human. And something I've noticed in our culture is that there are a lot of people who want to just cancel things that trigger them or upset them, or things like that. And there's a lack of forgiveness, because in order to forgive, you have to honor your own humanity. You have to honor your needs. You have to honor your frailty. You have to honor weakness. You have to honor all of it. And if you don't, you can't find that place of forgiveness, which is the place of freedom. And I started seeing all around me examples of people who are in a battle with what is, or what was said, or what was done, or what wasn't done, or what wasn't said. Okay, and they're trying to eradicate it so that they can feel better, but they're still dysfunctionally bonded with it. And so when you take the path of forgiveness, one of embodiment, one of coming home. Now, there are lots of avenues of coming home. There are a lot of embodiment practices. And I've actually been doing a lot of embodiment practices, things like Qigong and Tai Chi, breath work. These are ways of coming home, because if we're not allowed to feel our anger, the emotions can feel so intense that we dissociate. And when we dissociate, that energy stays stuck, kind of like being in a prison. So I share this with you because I'd like to bring awareness to anger. I'd like to give you permission to feel your anger and not feel shame or guilt about feeling anger, or the needs that you have underneath the anger that weren't met. This is part of your humanity, and in finding the place of forgiveness, you can find your own humanity and love yourself for having those needs. And when you do that, you set yourself free. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.